Welcome to Iteration 3 of the What It Takes Radio, a flagship program. We began as the Jesus Entrepreneur. Then we felt about being a master entrepreneur. I think we've finally discovered what we're really all about. And we call this Ideas, Influence, Impact, Income. That's the name of our program, and it is the Creator Entrepreneur Podcast. We'll tell you the story, and then we're going to give you one of the greatest ideas and one of the best stories ever heard. That begins right here on New Beginnings, Season 1, Episode 1 of Ideas, Influence, Impact, and Income. It's coming your way right now.
Is a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight.
One of the nice things about the digital world, the internet world, is that you can continually make changes and updates. In fact, it is expected that you will continually, from a piece of software or product you've purchased before, you'll get notice. We found a few bugs that needed to be fixed, and we found some ways to improve the product. We think you'll like this better. It will work better. And that's the way we have come to believe this continually ongoing, changing, new iterations, improvements, innovations as part of the products and services that we buy, and in terms of the products and services that we give. As I've said before, from now on, no book might ever be finished. In fact, if it's a good yarn, a good story, it just might keep on going and then changing, and new additions flow from it as the artist, the author, the writer, the creator continually improves the product, improves the service, and improves what the God-given creation is from them. Well, we're going to try to live that way, and so I want you to hopefully join with us, because in our new iteration, in our new way of doing things, we've also discovered some new products and services and technologies which will make it much easier for you to play a part and to be a part of this program. Well, let's start with ideas. One of the premier ideas that we've always used in my many years of performance coaching actually was an old idea, and it came from St. Augustine, quite a creator Christian entrepreneur to begin with, and he said this is one of the most important questions ever. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be remembered? Later on, Peter Drucker, and that's much later on, hundreds of years, the world-class, world-famous, almost the creator of management consulting, said toward the end of his career and his practice that he had come to the conclusion that he could never really help a chief executive, a leadership person, who was not able to answer this question. He would simply say to them, "You will leave someday. Your position, your company, obviously our very being. Tell me, how do you want to be remembered?" And he went on, as I said, to remind himself and remind them that until they could answer that question, he's not sure that they could be helped, and he was sure that he couldn't be the one who might. How do you want to be remembered? Well, I'm going to encourage you in this, what I call season of elections. And that's what we're in. Elections is when you elect something, you make a choice, you embrace something, you get on board, you sign up, you raise your hand, you follow through. I'm going to ask you to do one of these elections. Give serious thought to that very question. How do you want to be remembered? Because your business is going to change, your life is going to change, there's going to be a number of changes with the COVID crisis and the comings and goings of it, with the election and all of the turmoil that's going through that and the many changes that will come out of that. Put that together and just simply the social fracturing that has hit us, we have a perfect storm of things that have come together, and the boat is going to rock, and it is going to be tossed, and it might get turned over, and indeed your boat might sink. The ultimate in sunk costs. I would encourage you to think about how you want to be remembered. And I recently, well, not real recently, but it was kind of an experiment, and I tried to make the point that the best way to begin your business plan, the very best way to begin your business plan, is first to write your obituary. What you want people to say about you and your work and who you are and what you do. If you do that, it would be very interesting for you to discover that once you've done that, and then you go through our 7 P's. Passion. Yeah. Purpose. Philosophy. People. Process. Product. And promotion. That will be the best way to build a pitch deck and to build a business plan. Do that work, and we can help you do it. You will find that you will be much better off in planning and pitching and promoting and pushing forward, pressing on with your new business idea and venture. So here's an idea for you. Here's how Thomas P. Coleman, April 24th, 1922 to October 21, 2020, age 98. Just an aside, Dr. Coleman was a good friend of ours for many years. He wasn't our doctor, but he was more than that. He was the doctor, which we would consult from time to time, but he was a dear friend and a fellow missionary, and you'll find that in his story. This is what was written about Dr. Coleman. Dr. Thomas Paul Coleman, 98, of Cambridge, Minnesota, passed away peacefully on Wednesday, October 21st, 2020, at Ecumen in North Branch. He was born April 24th, 1922, in Springvale, Minnesota, to William and Christine Juden Coleman. He wore flannel shirts all year long and paired them with belted blue jeans and trucker caps. He kept them neat and clean and always looked like he was wearing his best. He knew everyone and everything, or so it often seemed, and if you asked him about a local farm or the life of someone he called friend, he'd tell you more than you could possibly remember. In his library, he kept poetry next to quantum physics and books on history next to books on gardening. He had spears hung on the walls, surgical photos for after-dinner entertainment, and a freezer full of raspberries to share. He loved his family and farming, and he lived his life as though he was the least interesting thing about it. And he may have been the only one who thought so. Thomas Paul Coleman was born to the children of Swedish immigrants in Minnesota in the spring of 1922. Raised on a farm that used horses rather than machinery, and where Swedish was heard as often as not, he spoke 2 languages, but set aside his schooling to help at home after an accident left his father unable to bear the load alone. Finishing Cambridge High School at the age of 22, Tom enlisted in 1944 and served on a submarine in the Atlantic for the final year of the Second World War. He attended Bethel Junior College in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the University of Minnesota, received his medical degree in 1953, and married Elaine Westland the following year. Tom's family had always been poor, so he and Elaine took his skills and her nursing degree to those like them. For nearly 20 years they lived in Ethiopia and cared for people who often had nowhere else to go, giving of their time and talents to anyone who needed it. Even now, more than 40 years later, the residents who live next door to one of his clinics remember him and will share stories of the doctor who entered the seclusion of their leprosy and offered aid. Sent away by revolution in 1975, Tom and Elaine returned to Minnesota and began splitting their time between a career at Cambridge Medical Center and training new doctors in Cameroon until they finally retired for good in 2004. Tom Coleman eventually spoke at least 4 languages and could read several more. He wrote poetry and Swedish to English translations, and he always sang grace before meals. He was friends with Minnesota farmers and Cameroonian kings, and he met Haile Selassie, the last emperor of Ethiopia, in 1958. As an orthopedic surgeon, Tom could have worked anywhere, but he chose to make his home in a country where the hyenas sang him to sleep and baboons owned the wilderness trails. And when his home had to change, he trained up new generations in another land, not his own, passing on what he had learned and holding nothing back. Tom loved God and he loved people. He never asked for thanks in return. But his name is known in homes around the world and today, and his legacy lives on through the lives of everyone he touched, and in a documentary filmed about his life and released in 2017. Tom leaves behind his wife of nearly 66 years, Elaine of Ecumen, North Branch, his children Judy Peterson of Cambridge, Minnesota, and Bill, Susan Maz, of Redondo Beach, California, 6 grandchildren and 1 step-granddaughter, and 5 great-grandchildren. He is also survived by his sister, Arlene Coleman, of Yucaipa, California, as well as many nieces, nephews, and other relatives and friends. He now celebrates his new life in heaven with his parents, William and Christine Coleman, his son Eric, his son-in-law John Peterson, his brothers James and Donald, and his sisters Jane, Jensen, and Marian Anderson. A memorial service will be held at 1 p.m. Friday, November 13th, 2020 at First Baptist Church in Cambridge. Visitation will be 1 hour prior to the service. And it goes on to note that attendance is limited, so please click the RSVP tab below and complete the short form, because the memorial will be full, and it will even have to be broadcast live streaming for the thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people around the world who want to honor Thomas P. Coleman. And that's how he is going to be remembered. And so perhaps that gives you a brief indication of why it's so important that all of us think in terms of that very important question. Probably the ironic thing is, though, that Thomas probably never thought about the question that much. He just lived his life as God led him to do it. And guess what? It turns out great and good and glorious indeed. My name is Stan Houston. This is episode 1 of Ideas, Influence, Impact, and Income. May you be blessed, and we hope you'll come back to episode 2 of this new iteration, this new idea, this new program just for you.